power one of the SM7s with that.
Definitely.
And it's incredible how the microphone preamp makes such a difference in just the feeling and the tone and the color and so many things of the microphone. The Apollo Pre by comparison is just they're nice, like they're clean, but it's just flat. Like it's just,
they do the job, but they're definitely not kind of contributing to the overall character and color.
Not a lot of mojo.
No.
And so that was like a pretty recent addition to the podcast. It used to be just Apollo. So again, just me like tinkering away, just obsessing, trying to get that perfect sound. But things are good. Things have been working well, and trying to figure out how to be a videographer now.
Nice.
So,
whole new skill set.
Whole new skills.
I kind of dabbled on that a little bit too. I was playing, like I enjoy watching YouTube a lot. Like I don't have a ton of spare time, but I enjoy, there's a couple people on YouTube, different tech people and filmmaker, even like Casey Neistat or something like that. Like I just enjoy watching. And there was a point where I was kind of like, I think I want to like contribute to this this little community that I partake in so much. And so I started dabbling with that, and the lights and the cameras and the syncing things and the editing. Like there's a whole. It was actually like kind of fun, like because I've been so focused on audio for like 20 years or more, that it was kind of fun to like learn a whole new skill set. And like, once you kind of like figure out some secrets of like editing video, you're just kind of like, oh, now I can go back and re-edit this thing. And it just kind of had that excitement that you used to have for audio when you were like 16 and you were just like
100%.
just figuring out like, oh, if I put this plugin on, then it does this. That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I hear you. And it's so exciting, like diving into a new thing and just those small little victories along the way that like keep you going, that like it's the chase that you're constantly after, learning new things and, little accomplishments, little improvements. Your YouTube channel is great. I've been watching, I've watched all the episodes.
Nice.
Some really interesting takeaways from that. I really appreciate how like intimate you were with just revealing your vocal chain. Like here's Tom McDonald. Like, and how, your gigantic 7K brightness bump.
Yeah.
Which looks wrong.
It is wrong.
But it works really well.
And it's not something that I always do. That kind of, and that, I guess that's why I'm not like precious about the vocal chain, is because like what I get from Tom specifically with his recording and then where he wants to go as an artist sonically is how we landed there. So like, if you're a different vocalist recording a different way and you're trying to get to a different place, then those moves aren't necessarily going to be the right moves. But he was just like, I remember the first couple songs we did together, he's like, everything sounds great. Can I get the vocal brighter? I was like, oh, okay. So, just add a little top end in the back. He's like, sounding way better. Can we get it brighter? I was like, really? Like, you're serious?
No way.
It's like, all right, okay, just jack it up, And it's one of those, because it's kind of gain match too. So it's one of those things that's like, either you filter out the bottom and you take out a bunch of low mid and upper mid and you kind of add a little top, or you just add a whole bunch of top and then you turn it down by 6 or 7 dB, So it's kind of like the same kind of tonal shift. But for whatever reason, adding all the top end and then having that go into a compressor is kind of really what kind of seemed to be what worked for getting that super upfront, like overly bright. It's slightly
like the kids call it crispy.
Crispy.
That's that word that a lot of the rappers that I work with like to use. Like make the vocals crispy. But it's that the approach is it's the right approach, obviously, for that. Do you know what mic he's recording with?
Now, like the last couple years, he's been just on a U87.
Okay.
So he just bought it.
Yeah.
And he records himself in a room not dissimilar from this, a little less acoustic treatment, just at home. Yeah. And he just does it in the same place, same spot. And it's funny because like every now and again I'll be going through his vocals and I'll hear like his dog barking in the background. Nice. Or you'll hear his girlfriend like, clicking away on her computer doing something. And it's just kind of like, oh, okay. Well, I guess RX is going to have to come into this a little bit. But
yeah, it works.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I have a question. Well, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Basically, you know Andy Wallace, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I was watching an interview with him on Mix with the Masters, and he said something that really surprised me, and I want to get your take on it. Basically, he said he doesn't know what it means to have a sound. Mm-hmm. He says, I don't know if I have a sound. My job as the mixer is to cater to the client's needs. For you, do you think that you have a sound? And if you do, where do you draw the line between leaving your mark and leaving the song alone?
I think I'm pretty much in line with Andy Wallace. I'm sure I have a sound. I'm not. It's not something I'm actively implementing into my mixes, and especially because I work on a lot of different stuff, like rap, rock, indie, and pop are kind of my four major places. But the rock stuff can go pretty heavy, and so the way I approach those mixes, if I had like some kind of signature I was trying to put on all of them, it wouldn't fit. My biggest thing is just trying to help the artist get to whatever outcome they are looking for, Mm-hmm. And sometimes they have a very clear line, them and their producer and maybe the team and management or the label, like they all have a very, very clear idea.
Right.
And they're able to articulate that clearly, which is helpful. And a lot of times they're not, and so when just like you just said, like if an artist says, I want my vocal to be really crispy, like it's kind of up to us to decode that and like point things in the right direction. Like, is that saturation? Is that brightness? Is that upfront compression? Is that volume on top of the mix? Or so there's lots of things to try and help them get as close to the finish line as humanly possible. And whether or not I do that with a sound, I don't really know. Like, I mean, like, I think the only thing that translates from mix to mix is just I like things to be a little clear and like punchy,
for sure.
So like I use a lot of saturation, like more than people would think, but I'm definitely not going like I usually try and clear things out rather than cloud things up. Like there's some mixers that are really good at like just making that kind of wash of and everything kind of blends and mm-hmm. not clouds together, but kind of like mushes together in this big fuzzy, and that's not usually how I approach things. So like that might be the only kind of signature thing, I guess. But
yeah.
But for the most part, I think Andy's right. I think most people are coming to me to help them actualize their ideas, not for me to make the decisions about what the idea should be.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. I think for me, listening to your catalog over the last couple of days and across all the genres that you work on, the word that comes to mind when I hear your sound is like cinematic.
I like that.
There's so much space mm-hmm. in everything, like just this massive sonic canvas with so damn much clarity. I'm so impressed by your vocal sound on some of the pop records. It just sounds like it's floating mm-hmm. in the center. One of the things I struggle with and for years was getting rid of that, like not that proximity effect, but just sort of that like rumble, that like low rumble. And if I high cut it too much, it sounded too thin.
Yeah.
And if I left it there, then it was like, ooh, that's like sticking out. Mm-hmm. Your vocals just like floating perfectly in this space in the mix, and it's so well crafted. So very, very impressed with that.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. But the cinematic thing is like I'm a huge movie buff. Like I love movies and TV shows. Like that's kind of my other kind of hobby and pastime. And I've never made a film or a movie or anything like that. Like, but I've always enjoyed it as someone who knows how to make media. So like, the camera angles and the lighting. And so I pay attention to all that. And like it depends on the artist, obviously. And like I said, what they're going for. But a lot of the artists that I'm working with paint me a picture with either with their lyrics or just with their descriptions of what they want. And it's usually there has a cinematic element to it, you know, like there's a rock band I work with called Incura, and they're the most theatrical, like operatic kind of metal band, and so it's already all built in there. So then it's kind of like up to me to try and just accentuate that. And then someone like Tom, like some of his songs are very specific stories, and sometimes he's playing like a character almost. And I don't know if you've watched any of his music videos, but he works with his girlfriend Nova, and she's like a cinematic genius. So I know that these songs are gonna like turn into this cinematic video. So like the music almost has to like be on the same level. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's being accomplished, I think, for sure.
Good. Thanks, man.
It's really, really cool. Because I don't know, like, I want to get your take on this too, but like far too often nowadays, I'm so disappointed by a lot of like mixes.
Yeah. I think I was listening to one of the other episodes and that kind of came up. And like, I'm of two minds about that because I've always had the mentality that there's no such good thing as good and bad. There's just, did it succeed as a piece of art or a piece of content? Like it's the different music that we work on is on that spectrum of an artistic endeavor and like a piece of entertainment content, and wherever it falls on that depends on the artist and the song and all that. But the success of that and how people absorb it isn't always tied to the sonics. I think the sonics play a big part in it, and I think they play a bigger part than some people think, especially in like longevity. Like you hear a really crappy bedroom thing of your favorite artist and you're like, oh my God, this is so cool. I don't care how bad it sounds because this is like some inside look at my favorite artist. But that's not something that you're going to listen to 10 times in a row and continue listening to 10 years from now. It's kind of like, it's almost like the sonics make it a one-off.
Yeah.
Whereas something that was well recorded, well produced, well put together has a better chance of
more longevity.
Yeah. And so like sure. I always try and put as much polish on it as I can, but there's been lots of times where a performance was good enough, even though it wasn't recorded well enough, that I'm just going to do the best I can with it rather than go back to the artist and say, you're going to have to re-record this because it's kind of a give and take, but there have been times where I've been disappointed with sonics of records as well, and I've kind of heard them and I kind of said, really? Like, especially bigger label stuff where it's like, there's literally probably about 60 people that it had to go through. And there was one point where someone said like, is that going to be okay? Like there's like zero low end on this. Like I was listening to it and there's like literally nothing below like 80 Hertz. Like, should we look at that?
I don't know what. Yeah, and I don't know. Like I don't know who has the answers, but it's really strange to me because like there's so many levels of quality control. There's so much money at stake. There's reputations. There's all these things. There's fans to impress and to a legacy to uphold for a lot of these people, and it's just
and to be honest, it's not that hard to fix. That's the other thing that gets me is like because talking about cinematic and stuff. Like when I watch $100 million movie and it has some really bad CG in it that takes me out, I'm kind of like, oh, like that kind of sucks. But then I think there might have been some timeline thing. There might have been a budget thing. Like, maybe that's like, I'm sure they could have done better. But with audio, it's kind of like to fix whatever the problem is usually like not that expensive.
Not that
Won't
hard.
take that much time.
And how many times have you read or heard people saying like, or mastering engineers, for example, saying like, they're getting new vocal takes the night that they're mastering the song. They're like, oh, a new mix just came in at like 3:30 in the morning with a new ad lib or something. Like I've heard that. And we know that like that shit's happening right down to the wire.
Oh yeah.
Right down to the last minute.
Especially in the rap world. And it is an interesting thing. And I know like, especially like independent artists that are releasing themselves and are paying for all the ad spend, and that's already all set up. And, like there are elements in play that kind of like make a deadline. But like I've had to cut in, iPhone voice memo recordings into like a real take that was recorded, 3 weeks ago with a Manly and a Manly, and and it's kind of like, normally I just make it some weird effect thing and I just mess it up and make it like
you purposefully just distort it or make it like an artistic choice.
Yeah, make it look like it's supposed to stick out, because if I can't make it not stick out, then like what's the point?
Wow.
But like there's been a couple of those, and some of them are like, me rolling my eyes being like, oh my God, I can't believe you're sending me a new line. But some of them were like, a song was recorded, it was mixed properly, everything was good, a video was shot, a deadline was set, all the uploads were already done, set to release on that certain time.
Yeah.
And then some feature hears it and says, I want to get on that song. And it's kind of like, okay, we got like 22 hours before this drops. Is there a way we can take out my verse, get him on there? He's going to shoot something on a green screen. We're going to edit it into the video. It's kind of like, well, let's try, like, why not? Let's try. And we'll do the best we can. If he records it on an iPhone, then who knows? We'll just try and make it as cool as we can.
It's crazy.
But yeah, it's a weird time.
It's a lot more common in the rap world.
Yes,
I think.
absolutely.
You're not going to get like someone in Nashville, like driving across the country with like their guitar to like fill in a part.
Yeah.
Rushed.
Yeah,
badly
recorded. I wanted to change that drum fill that we recorded at the Armory, so I just punched it in really quick at home with an iPhone.
I don't think so.
It doesn't really happen.
I don't think so.
So yeah, it's definitely, and it's not unique to the rap world, but it is. Yeah, it just seems to be something that's a lot more prominent there for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's where the problem lies. How we end up with a lot of those disappointing sonic experiences is because the barrier for entry is non-existent, and it's a beautiful thing, but it's also a problem at the same time, where it's just like Snowball, Mike, Fruity Loops, and you can put your record out on SoundCloud, smashing your soft clipper, and it might be a catchy song. And
and people might hear it and think it's cool, but again, it kind of comes down to that longevity thing a little bit too, where it's kind of like, you might be able to get some eyeballs on it, and you might be able to start something with it. But there's like even big artists of their kind of original older stuff that I caught on when I was younger, but I can't go back and listen to that stuff. Like, I can listen to their stuff now because it's well produced and well mixed and all that stuff, but I never go back and listen to that, but yeah, it's a funny thing. And I think a part of it has to do with collaboration, because like back in the day, you had to have at least 5 or 6 or 10 people involved to get a record made, with the engineers and the producers and the management and the agents. And now it's rare that it's more than 1 or maybe 2 people.
Yeah, honestly.
Like, either they're doing it themselves, putting it out themselves with no collaboration at all. And it's not that collaboration's needed, but it's like, I do think there is a power in humanity of 2 heads coming together, 5 heads coming together, all these creative energies getting poured into a pot and stirred and thrown out,
Yeah.
So even if it's like a self-recording artist and a mixing engineer like you and I, to kind of have a little bit of collaboration, a little bit of back and forth, and whether it's you giving them notes and them, changing some things before they send it to you, or even just when you get the mix, you're kind of like, oh, hey, I muted out this section and I actually doubled up this bridge section because I thought, like it was cool. And it all depends on your skills as an arranger and a musician. And I think I heard you were a musician yourself, right? Yeah. So, bringing that to the table, as long as it's not encroaching on the artist's thing, I think it can be positive, and I think everyone that I've ever collaborated with has said how beneficial it is to the end product. Not necessarily because of my skill, but just I never would have thought to approach it that way, or I never would have thought that it could have sounded this way, or those things. It's kind of like, well, you wouldn't have known that with collaboration. So I don't know. I think it's important. I think it's a big part of it, and it's become not necessary, which I think is detrimental to the music.
Detrimental. Yeah. I mean, for me, like, some of the best records, the most experiences that I've had have been where I'm mixing it, but also contributing in the sense of like song structure, producer, coach, mentor, all these things, like from my background of doing this for 20 years and having the art, like getting the artist to think differently, question them, challenging them on certain things, and then like, oh, let's stretch this song left and right and see how far it can bend, you know what I mean? And see what holds up into the end, as opposed to just like one person, one idea, rigid, and no one else can touch this, and then let's just put it out. So yeah, collaboration in music is magic. It's really, 100%. What originally got you into music? Like, how old were you? When did you first think about like, oh, I want to try that? Like, were you a musician first? Was it recording first? How did that go?
Yeah, I was a musician first. So, I like no one in my family's musical at all. So I don't have any, my parents or anything don't play any instruments. But I got on piano lessons early and I enjoyed that. I never did my scales and stuff. I would just play my own songs all the time. And that was kind of, I just like write these little things, and I'd go to lesson and she'd be like, did you do your scales? I was like, no, but I wrote this and I played for it. She's like, that's really nice, but you got to do your scales. And so I got into that, and then kind of switched to guitar in high school and started playing with a band. And then I did I was a big musical theater kid.
Cool.
So I did singing and performing for a couple different musical theater companies all through high school and university. That was like my job. And then I liked working on other people's music. I liked collaborating a lot. I was always jumping between styles, whether I was in like a super heavy rock band or like some kind of acoustic-y, kind of folky kind of band or whatever. And I didn't love touring all that much. I had done quite a bit of touring, and I just I was having a little trouble seeing like a life doing that
on the road.
And at the time that was like, especially for bands, indie bands or rock bands, or it was kind of like touring's where you make your money.
Yeah.
So if you want to be in a band, you kind of have to tour. So I got into recording, and the band I was in at the time, we toured down to Florida, and we did 2 weeks at Full Sail there. I don't know if you know Full Sail. It's like an audio school.
Yeah.
And we had a fan that was going to school there, and he asked us, we set it up so that we came down and we recorded there for 2 weeks, and we were like the test band for the whole. Yep. So every class did a different song, and then we ended up leaving with six song EP that was all recorded by one song, so they're all different. It's kind of weird. Didn't turn out great at all. And so, when I kind of got the mixes, I was like, oh, okay. And then I was starting to get excited because that was the first time I saw like, oh, this is like a school, and there's like there's class and people learning this, and like I could learn this.
Yeah. Like this could be a potential career.
Exactly.
For me. Yeah.
And so, I kind of got a hold of those sessions, and then just spent some time trying to remix them myself and figuring stuff out. And, the university I was at the time had a little kind of new media, elective that I took that kind of got me into it. And then when I decided I wanted to take it more seriously, I found a school out in England, of all places, because Nimbus wasn't around yet. There was Metalworks was in Toronto, and I think that was kind of it. And then Full Sail, but it was like, $40,000 or whatever it was. So it just wasn't feasible for me. So I found the school out in England, and I moved out there for 2 years and studied out there. And
that's crazy. I also went to audio engineering school in the UK.
Really? Where'd you go?
Yeah, it was called Point Blank.
Okay.
In London.
I went to the School of Sound Recording in Manchester.
Oh, sweet.
It's called SSR.
Yeah.
I think it's still there. But no, it was a great space. It was a studio in Manchester called Spirit Studios that recorded like the Happy Mondays and like a lot of kind of Northern England kind of new wave pop stuff. And they were running a school out of their studio for the longest time. And they had just expanded, bought a building, set up some classrooms. Were building, I think they were about 8 studios in the building. Some small kind of, about this size, and then 2 that kind of had big, they moved the consoles over and stuff. And so I kind of came in right at the right time where they hadn't upped their prices for this new facility yet, but the whole facility was kind of available, and they weren't really sure how to figure it out yet. So they kind of just let the students do whatever they wanted. And I just went out and found bands in Manchester and brought them in and recorded. Like I must have recorded probably 6 albums in the time that I was there. Cause I'd literally go in the studio every single day and it worked out really good. So it was a cool school for sure.
What were the instructors like? Were they actively like proper producers currently working, or just like theory instructors? Or
there was one guy that was super active called Rob McGooligan, and he did a bunch of heavier stuff in England, and he was still in demand and working. And then some of the other ones were more theory or guys that had done something like 5 years ago that was relevant, but then they haven't really. But they were all good instructors. I enjoyed it a lot, but I don't know. The biggest thing, I kind of go back and forth with audio schools and whether or not they're the right move for new up and comers, because they're just getting prohibitively expensive, and it's a lot to take on. Yeah. But the biggest thing is if they have a studio and you can get in the studio and you can do as much hands-on stuff as humanly possible, either with an instructor or yourself, or preferably both, places that have 24-hour access. Because there's a lot of schools I've gone to where it's like you get like 1 hour a week in the studio, and then the rest is like, read this paper on compression.
Yeah, that's not right.
This paper on compression.
That's not right.
No. And that's where I learned, 99% of the people that, my peers, like that's how they learned, and it's good to, have some theory, and it's good to learn about, but like the hands-on stuff is really, you get in there, you record a vocal, you say, oh wow, I distorted the crap out of that. Like I got to learn about gain staging now.
The hands-on stuff. I mean, even if you treat your tuition as just what studio time would cost, that's a good way to look at it, and get in there as much as you can. Yeah. Twist all the knobs, see what too much compression sounds like on the way in, learn about bad gain staging, just test all the mics you can. Yeah. That's what we tried to do as much as possible. Definitely. I mean, I had the benefit of also having some really insane instructors when I was at Point Blank. People that were Phil Ramacon, who was like who wrote like keyboard parts for Prince and Bob Marley, and that No Doubt song, "It's My Life." He wrote that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so legit motherfuckers. We had a one of those like pep talk, like someone famous comes in and talks to the kids, which was like one of Led Zeppelin's early engineers who like came in and talked to us about like working with John Bonham and stuff, and we were like, whoa. So it was like very cool, and man, I lived there.
Yeah.
I slept at home, but because they didn't have beds there. But man, I was
that was
at
my
school all the time.
I eventually, like within the first couple months I was at the school, I got hired on as a TA because I knew like a little. I had already kind of worked with Pro Tools in that university course before, and so I knew Pro Tools when we were on Pro Tools, and so they hired me on as a TA just to kind of help out some of the other students, and when they were in for their studio time, just kind of be on site, and if they need you to help patch something or whatever, go in and help. And they gave me keys, and I would lock up when the students were done, and I just kind of asked them. I was like, "Do you mind if I use the studios when they're empty?" They're like, "Nope." And I was like,
"There we go."
Yeah. And I would finish. I was in the kind of evening. They did morning classes and kind of, like 2 to 6 kind of classes, evening classes. So I did the evening class, and then I would do the TA thing until close, depending on who was in the studios and who needed help. And then I would stay in the studios till about 8 in the morning, and then I would go home, and I'd usually get something to eat, which was my dinner. But when the breakfast places open up, and I'd do any grocery shopping or go to the bank or the errands I had to do, go to sleep, get up, be back at the studio by 2 in the afternoon for my classes, and that was like literally my schedule for like 2 years. It was a little nutty, but.
Yeah, but hey, that's the time to do it. Like you're in your early 20s then, and like indestructible.
And I, moved to England, so I didn't I made friends eventually, but I didn't have a ton of friends and or significant other to kind of that was waiting on me, or my family was all back in Canada, so it was kind of this is concentrated focus for sure.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it was really similar for me too, man. And nice. And it was I got a lot out of that. Yeah. I recorded an album. I was still making my own music back then, and recorded an album there, and met a lot of people, networked, and still in touch with some of my instructors there. That was actually when there was a course at Point Blank called The Art of Mixing that made me almost hit a brick wall with rapping and be like, this is fucking cool. I want to be a mixer. The instructor was so, Kevin Paul, I still remember his name, just made it so fun. It was so well presented. It would the assignments were interactive and hands-on, and we got feedback, and it was oh wow, look how adjusting the release makes this vocal sit better in time with the rhythm of the song, shit like that. And I was like, whoa. Yeah. The art, literally the art of mixing, and from then on, that was the milestone for me. I still continued to make my own music after that, and I went to Nimbus when I moved back to Vancouver. I did another year there of engineering, but it was still more and more trying to work with other people's music, mix other people's music, while still doing my own, but knowing that's kind of the direction I'm going in now.
Yeah.
Because of school. And I think that, then if anyone can have that type of similar experience from school, that's so powerful. I would hope that's what you can take away from it, is just some sort of, even if it's not all the technical skills that you're ever going to need, at least point you in the right direction, or give you that spark, or give you that inspiration that sets you in the right direction.
Well, yeah, that's one thing that mentorship or having a good instructor can do, that and that's a point for going to an audio school. It's if you're going to set aside 15 grand or whatever, it's like you said, it's either that goes to tuition, and you meet a mentor and you're able to kind of glean knowledge, and you're in a space that is more than you could ever afford, and you get to work on that gear and learn on that gear, or you take that 15,000 and you rent out a studio and learn that way, or you take that 15,000 and you buy your own gear and you try and learn yourself, which I know a lot of people that have done, and they've done well with that. But the biggest thing you miss is that potential mentorship network, where you can kind of have someone take you just leaps and bounds ahead than you would have been able to on your own, because they're kind of you're kind of middling with this, but you should be focusing on this. And you're just oh, that's huge.
Yeah, no, I like how you said that, and also just the introduction to the culture.
Yeah.
Correctly done. That's what Nimbus was. It was we weren't students, we were actively working on bands, and when I did the music business program, we weren't reading about putting shows out. We were renting venues out and selling tickets and actually
reaching out to people and trying to because there's the the technical knowledge and know-how, and then also the managing a business, and then also kind of just the people skills of being a recording vocals for a long time, being a good hang in the studio is just as important as knowing how to properly record a vocal.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And just that person to person kind of interaction of knowing when to say something, knowing when not to, just kind of
absolutely
taking care of the vibe, finding out what the vibe is, and just nurturing the vibe, if it's kind of I'm a go-getter, this is going to be the best vocal on the planet, I'm going to kill everybody, let's go to town, it's kind of okay, I guess we're doing that now, or if it's just I just want to vibe, I just want to hang, I just want a cool place to chill, it's okay, the lights come down, do you need a drink, tell me about your day, just that personality side, and it's really hard to learn that when you're not immersed in the culture a little bit, and you can kind of see, even if it's negative, if you see someone doing something you're like, oh man, like this is totally not the vibe. And he's like, you know, trying to push this along, and you can kind of, it's almost like negative learning, you know, where you like, it's still learning. You're just learning what not to do rather than what to do, you know?
Yeah. Oh man. And being there physically in the room, like you can't replace, like no textbook can replace any of that. Like being like living it, experiencing it, you know, booking your own sessions, bringing artists in and all that stuff. It's so valuable. And that's why, like, you know, us as producers and mixers, like our skill set and repertoire is so much deeper than like compression and EQ. Like we're like therapists and, you know, babysitters and mentors and like all wrapped into one, you know, and like extremely sensitive, you know, awareness that we have to have, which is, like something that I don't think gets talked about enough.
No.
Okay. So you're at school in Manchester, and then how did your apprenticeship with Arnold Lanny come together? How much further along was that, and how did that go?
Yeah, well, in Manchester, school was done, so my student visa ran out. I stayed an extra 6 months as a visitor, you know, Canada, UK relations. You can stay for 6 months without any kind of visa. During that time, I was really kind of thinking, like, do I want to, because the only sucky thing about studying abroad was some of that network that you built. It's not, it doesn't translate necessarily, you know, like that. So I was a little, I had started to build a network. I had recorded some bands that, you know, were doing well, and the recordings I did were, you know, people were taking notice, and so it's kind of like, do I try and stay here and get some kind of visa or start working for a studio and see if they'll sponsor me, or come back to Canada? And I ended up choosing the latter. Ended up in Vancouver, met up with some old friends of mine who grew up in my hometown, a band called Incura, and just did the classic pitch, you know, like I'll record one song for absolutely nothing.
Yep.
I'll make it as good as humanly possible. You got nothing to lose. Like, let's just try it. That song ended up winning the Seafox Seeds. It was like a kind of a battle of the bands that the radio station Seafox used to put on. And, you know, there was a decent prize. And so they submitted that single that I did, and that won. And they got some studio time at Mushroom, which they brought me on to produce that stuff. And then they got some consultations with like the agency and Coalition management, who manage Our Lady Peace and Simple Plan and Finger 11. And it's run by a guy named Rob Lanny. And their kind of way of working is Arnold Lanny produces the band, Rob Lanny manages the band, and all succeed. And it worked. You know, Arn put together or found like Our Lady Peace and helped them put together their first 4 records. And you know, and then they kind of replicated that success.
Yeah.
And so part of the prize was Incura got this meeting with Coalition, and they decided to sign them, but you have to go down to California and work with Arn.
Okay.
Me doing the songs, some of the songs for free for them, we kind of had a stipulation that any future stuff that, you know, came from the success of how awesome these songs are going to be, I would get to produce. So they called me and they kind of said like, hey, we got this opportunity to go work with Arnold, who's like, you know, like, he produced like some of our favorite records growing up.
Yeah.
Like, I know we have this agreement with you. Like, what can happen here? Because we kind of want to like do it. And I was like, just take me with you. Like, I'll like, I don't care. I'll be a tape or a, you know, a runner at the studio. Like, I just want to kind of hang out in the room with her too. Like, I love his records too.
Yeah.
So there was a funny conversation where Arn called me, like cold called me, and he's like, so I hear we're working on this Incura record together. And I was like, yeah, I guess. He's like, so who are you? And I'm like, I'm Evan Morgan. Hi, you've never heard of me. I'm not anybody. I just, you know, there was, because I think he just kind of heard that there was like another producer coming down.
Yes.
And so it was like this, like, so he's like, so who are you? And I just kind of went, and I talked to him and I explained kind of what the situation was. Like, you know, I was the same age as the band. Like, we're all kind of coming up together and stuff. And it ended up being a really good relationship. Arn, he started his career in Toronto. He produced his kind of big 3 bands there. And then with that success, he moved down to LA. And he was never able to find an assistant. He had a really good engineer in Toronto, but he didn't come with him. So he was never able to find anyone to work with down in LA. He's a very eccentric dude. He's got a lot of like particulars on sounds and stuff. And he was just never able to find anyone. And I was able to just kind of slot myself in. And it was mostly Arn produce, me engineer kind of relationship.
Nice.
And he's the type of producer, he's a songwriter first and foremost. So he's the type of producer that if he can sit at the back of the room and just listen with his eyes closed and not have to worry about, setting this preamp or whatever, like he's much happier doing that. He can just sit and listen to the vocal and kind of say, like maybe he'll say like, can we just get a little brighter or whatever. But it's more just about the songwriting, the performance, the lyric, the presentation, all that. And he kind of left a lot of the engineering stuff to me, which was really nice. And so I was down in California with him for over 2 years. It kind of was on and off. Like I'd be down there for 6 months and then I'd come back and work on some stuff in Vancouver that I was working on. And then, he'd have a project and he'd just kind of fly me down. And there was a few times where he'd be like, yeah, can you be here in like 6 days? Like this project's going to go and it's going to start. I was like, oh, okay. How long are you going to be there? He's like, oh, I don't know, maybe like 4 months. It's like, oh, okay. So it was a little hectic, but it was a really good opportunity for that mentorship thing that we were talking about, because I approached production, there's like a lot of different ways into production. And it's either like you're an artist and now you're helping other artists make their records, or you're an engineer and you're able to help artists get the sound that they want, but you're coming at it from a very engineering kind of side. And that was always my approach. Like I had gotten really good at the engineering. I could just fly on Pro Tools, and most of the records I was producing, I was kind of engineering and then kind of being a little bit of, like another member of the band in terms of songwriting and stuff, but it was like 90% engineering. And Arn's approach was 100% songwriting, and then everything else was like secondary to that. The sonics, the engineering, the mixing, like it was all just about the song and then the performance. And so it was a good lens into a different side of production for me, because I was the kind of guy that could I would focus on the guitar tone for like an hour before I even be like, okay, like what's the part you're actually playing, And I was just like, oh, I got to get these 3 mics in phase, or, or I'm going to do the Garth thing and set up like 4 cabs with 3 mics each and try and, get them all perfect and in phase. And it's kind of like, well, what are we even trying to achieve sonically? Like maybe we just maybe we want a Prince thing. Maybe we just plug the guitar right into a DI and record it that way. Like let's focus on the part and make sure that the part's right before we try and get the sound. And it's weird that I didn't think of it like that kind of before, but it makes so much sense. And Arn was just so focused on that. Like, it was a good learning experience.
It sounds like a really good balance.
Yeah.
Like between the two of you, like you each clearly knew your lane and you were able to work on that and without butting heads too much.
No. And, I think we actually, I definitely, helped Arn with, cause we did probably like 5 records, Balconies and Cura. We did some Hello Operator stuff. There was a couple bands that we worked on together, and there would be times where he would sit with the guitar player, and they would figure out the part, and it would be try it on this guitar instead of this guitar, and do what you're doing, but do an inversion so you can play it up on the higher string, so the whole thing sounds a little thinner, like that kind of stuff. They'd figure out the part, and I'd be like, okay, I'm going to go have dinner with my family now, so you guys just record it. And, we'd do all the takes, all the double tracking, everything we needed to do. We'd be there till 3 a.m, and then he'd come in the morning and listen and be like, oh, yeah, okay.
Thumbs up.
But it sounds good, like maybe, or it's like, maybe let's just try it a little fuzzier, but he would just kind of leave the whole, that side of the production, aside from the actual part, just to us. And me and the guitar player would kind of just try all this. Let's try this combo with this amp, and let's try this, and let's try this pedal, and he just kind of entrusted us and same with Arn, like he loves synths, but he's not like that synth savvy. So like he loves using them to layer things and get these things, but he doesn't know how to find a sound really. So he'll just be like, I kind of want like a bassy thing, but like with a little fizz on top, and then like maybe at some points it'll kind of like filter down a bit. All right, so I'll either go through a million presets and find you this, or I'll just try and build it from scratch, like on the Moog or whatever. And then I'd get it and yeah, that's great. Let's do it. Let's record it. It's like, okay, so it was a really good, it was a good dynamic. And he's a really good dude. He's really sweet. And I haven't been down to work with him in quite a while. I don't know if he's I know he's still writing for some people, but I don't know if he's producing all that much anymore. So yeah, no, but it was a good time for sure.
What are there any lasting, like, not memories, but like lessons or philosophies or big takeaways from those years with him?
The biggest thing is focus on the part. And, it's in the notes. It's not, like, and I've thought of different ways to like, because I get asked this question, not that specific question, but like all the time, like, how can I make my vocal sound better, or how can I record, I can't get my guitars to sound right at home or whatever. And like that whole mentality of, starting at the source or getting it right at the source or that kind of thing. But it's almost like the order of importance follows the signal chain, So like if you want a bright vocal, the first thing people think is, oh, I need like a bright microphone. Like I should get like a, like an AKG or something, or like maybe my preamp's darkening it up too much, but they never think to actually just brighten up their face, like sing it brighter, and sing it with a smile so that it's coming out like this rather than coming out, like it's just, and that whole approach of, and same with like, I can't get my acoustic guitar to sound good in my home recording. It's like, okay, well, don't think about what mic you're using, or like, do I need an external preamp? Think, how am I playing my guitar? Like, are you playing, like, what size of pick are you strumming it with? Like, how dead are the strings? Like, is it the right guitar to be playing? Like, are you playing a jumbo, or are you playing like a concert, and like
all the way down to the source,
all the way down, and it's like the farther up the chain you go, the more drastic of a change you're able to make. And people, a lot of times, especially like on the internet and stuff, because it's hard to say, play your part differently on the internet. It's a lot easier to say, well, you need a 57's not good enough. You need a condenser mic to do that. Or, it's just easier to talk gear, but you're already like so far down the chain that you're not going to have that drastic of an effect. Yeah. Like if I swap this mic out for the Manly, like it's going to sound a little different for sure. It's going to, have a little bit more top end. But like, if I just sang the part completely different, or if you came over here and sang the part because your voice suits it better, it's like, that's 100% different. Like that's where you're getting the change.
That's crazy. Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up. Cause I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And, I've made countless like cooking and food analogies on this podcast before, but it really does come down to like the source material, and even down to like the recording technique with that chosen microphone, like the distance, the how hard you're hitting the pre on the way in, like all of these things before fussing about like, oh, what plugin should I get? Friggin' Al Schmidt, I think, R.I.P. in another Mix with the Masters interview was like, I EQ with my microphones. And it's like, I don't know how many hours, but that art of recording, that art of like there being a specific person for that job is kind of gone now, because so many people are just, their mixer is their recording engineer, or they're doing it themselves. But to have like somebody who's just like a legend at recording and spend a couple of hours auditioning mics, auditioning position, like tone, get it right at the beginning. Yeah. So that we have an idea of what we want this to sound like. We're going to get it right from the beginning, like adjusting how much light you let into your camera when you're taking the shot versus brightening it in editing, right? Type of thing.
Well, it's even farther than that. Like nowadays, it's like capture it on green screen and build the entire background and the lighting and the atmosphere in the computer. Yeah. Versus getting it in camera. And that's kind of what we're talking about. It's like you can just record, get a sample of your voice with whatever mic into whatever preamp, and then just mess with it in the computer endlessly. Or you can try and find, and not just the right mic and the right placement, but also in the right room, also and mainly with the right performance.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't record voice, like I don't do much recording at all anymore.
Oh. That sounds like one of those Amber alerts.
It is. Emergency. It's a test.
We're doing a podcast.
Come on, BC.
Oh. Well, I'm going to have to...
Did it stop your recording, you think?
Stop the recording. It's okay, I'll have to splice it together.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We'll make up.
Oh, yeah. Forgot to do my test at the beginning.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's all right. We'll
where were we?
Yeah. So, but just like the biggest thing I learned from Aaron was that it starts in the performance, and when you get the performance right, what mic you use and what preamp you use, and definitely it almost like doesn't matter. Because as long as it's like better than an iPhone mic, it's you're going to capture it. And there's that line between, like, especially like recording vocalists, where if you have the opportunity to set up some mics and get a shootout to find the right one, and it's totally worth doing. But on the flip side, I've seen people that have an 8 or 10 hour vocal session booked, and the engineer will spend the first 2 hours having the artist scream into 17 different microphones, and then can you go back to this one and back to this one, and by the time they've actually decided that the vocals are fried, the singer's like so annoyed with the whole vibe of the, so it's kind of like there is like a line, you know what I mean?
That's extreme. That's definitely taking it too far, and but I still feel like there's a benefit, like when done tastefully or done within reason, to audition microphones, but don't like exhaust your artist and like not. Kill the vibe, and that's just definitely taking it too far.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things with production in general is understanding that dynamic of like, okay, we've done 10 takes, I feel like we can still go better. So like, how far do we push this before, because if I push too far, then the artist might stop kind of trusting the session, or they might burn themselves out, and that's going to affect the next couple hours of our session. So like, there is that constant kind of push and pull of, you don't want to just do one take and assume that you've got it and just being able to edit everything. But you also don't want to do 27 takes to the point where the artist doesn't even know what they're singing anymore and like has lost all faith in everything, and just kind of like, I'll sing it again. I don't even care. So it's, that's kind of another art of recording that, you kind of have to find that balance, and it's different for every artist. It's different. Some artists like to be pushed. They like to experiment. Some artists get frustrated quick, and that frustration can really kind of damper their performance, and you can hear it in their voice where they're just kind of, they go like this and they can't hit their high notes anymore. And it's just like, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Do you find like the performance sometimes, let me think about how I want to word this here, but when I work with less experienced artists, for example, they're harder to mix than someone who's nailed their performance. Even if the recording's good, it's just like the feeling is better, and this somehow is just fitting in the song better versus somebody that's not confident, shy, unsure about their tone. We're doing 45 takes because they're like, oh, that sucks. Mm-hmm. When it gets time to mix, I find that the people that have nailed their performance, that come in confident, that come in with like, I know what I'm doing. That's just like, oh, now it's just part of the music, and I'm just like riding the fader a little bit. Do you find that at all? Like,
absolutely, man.
Yeah.
And vocals especially, but I think that goes for all instruments. Like getting that performance right is what makes a good mix down the road. And as I transitioned into full-time mixing, keeping my production chops and doing it's almost like a post-production, where they've done a production either, there's some bands I work with in Toronto through Coalition still and some of the contacts I've made out there. A lot of artists down in LA, and they send me all the stems for me to mix, but there's a whole kind of post-production stage where it's essentially that, where I'm trying my best to make the material performance-wise, timing-wise, pitch-wise, like everything as close to possible before I even start mixing, putting EQs and compression on, because it just, everything slots in to this place a little bit better. And like vocals are the quintessential of this, where if the timing and the tuning are right, like the vocal just sits into the music and then you can push it forward and push it back so easily.
Right.
But if the timing is off or the pitch is, like especially nowadays in pop and hip hop where 99% of the instruments are electronic. So the tuning is perfect. The timing's perfect.
Yeah.
And then there's this vocal that's not sitting. It's just like, it's impossible to mix it in there. It just never sounds like it belongs. And it's not that it has to be like pitch perfect or auto-tuned to death. It's just like, I use Melodyne more than anything, and it's all massaging, but I'm massaging timing. I'm massaging the volume of words. Like I do a lot of volume, like it's not clip gaining because it's in Melodyne, but it's essentially clip gaining before it goes into compression, and I'm doing my de-essing there. Like I do de-essing all by hand, and massaging doubles and harmonies, doubles to make sure that either it sounds like a double if it wants to be, like there's this kind of pop punk revival that's been happening for the last couple of years. So like having that obvious double is like cool, and it sounds, kind of like a pop punk thing, or having a super thick layered, like really tight double or quad or, whatever they're doing with their vocals. That's almost like doing 75% of the mix is getting that right first.
Totally.
And then it's like, I can put I'll brighten it up and I'll put some compression and I'll put some verb on it and whatever. It's all, fun.
Yeah. But taking care of business, like at that stage, just saves you so much stress later on. Yeah. It's the weirdest thing. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. All those points that you just made are fantastic about like Melodyne, de-essing by hand, getting everything tight in a song that does need to sound quantized, all of those things. But my God, like there's just such an obvious feeling sometimes when I get to the mixing stage and I'm just like, this is just the struggle city right now. Like this guy was not on today and I just can't get this vocal right. Yeah. And I'm like, do I suck at mixing? Like what's going on here? Like I put a lot of pressure on myself and think like, why can't I do this? This is my fault. And then I'll go back to take a break, go for a walk, and open up something else where like the song's great, the performance is great, artist nailed it, and I'm like, okay, it's not me, it's okay. But it's a weird thing. It's because mixing really is so much about feeling, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's what makes a good mixer. Someone like Andy Wallace or some of the mixers I look up to, is they're getting in tune with the feeling of the song. And then they're just perpetuating it, and they're just accentuating it, and they're just propelling it. It was like the song's kind of leaning this way, and I'm going to, pave a road going that way, and I'm going to shove it down, off it goes. Yeah. And getting that feeling is like that. It's like the best feeling. Yeah. They're like, there's times where I'm like literally like dancing around my studio, and I'm like, oh, okay, the mix must be done. Cause I'm like,
something's working right now.
My chair back and stood up and like,
yes.
But cause there are technical things, and there are technical like yeses and nos, in terms of gain staging and tonal balance and even like something like volume balance. But I don't know. I feel like so much of that every now and again I'll hear something and I'm like, oh, that vocal's like 8 dB too loud, but it's kind of cool and it kind of works, like or like this entire track is just crunched and clipped, but it sounds like, Billie Eilish is really good for that kind of stuff, or she like there's these creative choices that like technically aren't right at all, but it sounds really cool, and it sounds cinematic, and it sounds so finding that feeling and then kind of trusting your your gut and trusting, your know-how in the engineering department to kind of go down that feeling and follow that feeling. I think it's kind of what separates okay mixers from amazing mixers. You know?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Sometimes like the balanced mix is the boring mix. And sometimes you want to know when to push that vocal 8 dB too loud to serve a certain feeling or energy that might suit that song.
And I think that's something that I learned. I struggled with that in the last maybe 5 years. I really kind of because before that, you were talking about how clear my mixes are and these things. And that's what I was working towards. I was trying to find that clarity. I was trying to but I had a little trouble with the adventurous stuff, like I'd push a vocal, like once I got my mix really clear and really balanced, if I pushed a vocal up like 1 dB, I was kind of like, oh, that's obviously too loud, obviously. And so now I'm trying, well, not now, but in the last 5 years or so, I've really just gone mental with automation, and I'm just really trying to make moments. And if it's kind of that's a cool sound, I want that to jump out in this moment. Let's make it jump out. Let's just
go for it.
Make it this cool thing. And not to the point where it distracts from the whole song, or, you got to be careful with that kind of stuff. But it's, especially nowadays with the amount of music coming out and everyone's trying to grab attention, why not do something cool and inventive and creative? And if the artist is okay with it and, or they're on board or whatever, then it kind of behooves you to take those chances and just try and make something cool and make it interesting and make it different. And,
110. I think whether people realize it or not, when they say oh, my favorite part of the song's coming up, they may actually be referring to automation or
Absolutely.
mix moves.
Definitely.
Or something that the engineer did rather than specifically, a different guitar part's coming in here, but oh, why do I like this part of the song? Why does the energy shift a certain way here? A lot of that's mixing. Yeah.
Well, and even the quintessential classic one of this cool drum fill's coming up and everyone's going to air drum it. The reason that caught their ear might be because they pushed the room mics 10 dB for that one fill, or it might even be a punch where it's a whole different drum set, like a John Bonham style in a different room, and then it goes back to the regular kind of static drums. So having those moments, and it's almost there's this giant screen and you're helping the audience with their focus.
Yeah.
It's kind of make sure you don't miss this, because this is cool. And now we're back and this is your story and this is your main character and we're going along, and then check this out. And it's up to you as the mixer to kind of be check this out,
You're almost like the guy in the theater with the spotlight at the back of the room, and there's the actors on stage, and you get to move the spotlight around and
Definitely.
Focus, help the audience kind of eye or ear or brain, move around a bit and, keep things interesting.
Definitely. Yeah. Whenever I talk to normies or civvies, like my wife's family or anyone that's not in the business or the culture, and they kind of ask about my job or what I do, a lot, the analogy of editing a movie really kind of seems to work, where it's I'm not the director per se, that's the producer. I'm not the main actor, that's obviously the artist, but I'm kind of editing the film. So the director might have had a vision, and I'm going to, they might have only shot exactly what they wanted, and they shot it with the angles that they wanted, and I'm going to help put that together. Maybe they didn't really know, so they kind of just shot everything. They shot 4 different angles of every single thing, and it's up to me to kind of
pick and choose,
but also pick and choose the feeling. If there's an argument with two characters, and they do the classic, shoulder over shoulder and cut back and forth, it's up to me to maybe say, I'm going to just sit on this one character for a while, and this guy's going to keep talking, but I want to focus on this guy's reaction to it, and it's kind of you can try and make a song, you can make everything as big as it can and huge, but maybe you want to make an active choice to be I want the listener to focus on this. This is the guitar part. This is kind of, I'm going to pull the strings back, or I'm going to take out all the low end of the strings or whatever to kind of just make sure that part is heard. And it's kind of it doesn't have to be that way. It could be this way. And that's one of the things with mixing that can be very challenging and can be very, what's the word I'm looking for? It can be, like a hindrance to a lot of people that are starting.
Yeah.
Because having that confidence to like make a choice and say, you know, like I've got 3 synths, a synth bass, a real bass, 2 guitar parts. How am I going to balance this?
Right.
You know, like, is it going to be a guitar focused song with synths kind of filling in the background? Is it a synth focused song with guitars just kind of there just to make it sound a little rockier? You know, like you can literally take it like infinite number of ways.
Yeah, you could almost make it like different genres depending on how you balance each of those instruments.
And I have, you know, like there's been a lot of songs, especially with Tom's stuff. He kind of he's a rap artist first and foremost, but he's got all these rock elements. And there's kind of times where you're kind of like, let's pull back all the synth drums and try and get some real drums in there. Let's, you know, all the electronic stuff becomes a background to and you start to push it into the rock realm.
Yeah.
You know, and so many artists now rock, like there's so much crossover now, like,
tons.
You know, like even rock song, you know, whether it's 21 Pilots or Imagine Dragons, like it's all pop.
I don't even know
hip-hop.
what that is.
Yeah.
It's really cool, but there's a lot of different stuff going on in those.
Yes.
records.
And each song can have its own kind of identity almost, where it's kind of like, this is obviously a rock song. This is a rap song. This is a, you know, kind of a mix between them. And, you know, it's fun to be able to play with those flavors and being able to kind of try it this way or try it this way. And, you know, sometimes you have a really definitive identity from the producer or whoever, and you kind of like, you don't want to stray too far from that. But sometimes, you know, it's like, I'm not really sure what to do with this. Like, I know I like it. I like my performance on it, but like, please help me. I don't know what to do. Yeah. You know, and then it's up to you to kind of like, you know, find that presentation.
Yeah. Find the right taste, find the right flavor. You talked about Tom a little bit. Why don't we get into that? You know, how did your relationship come about with Tom McDonald, and what's it like working with him?
Well, so I was in Vancouver and I was mainly working with that Incura rock band, and then a bunch, you know, once the Seas competition, a lot of the other artists that were playing in that realm started to reach out to me, and there was an artist named Brandon Hart, who's a local guy. He used to be in a rockier kind of project. He's always been a rapper. He started his own solo rap thing, which has kind of morphed into more, like, he sings most of his songs. Like, there's still rapping in there, but it's much more of just kind of a singing artist. And so he contacted me. He happens to be best friends with Tom. They grew up together. So when Tom heard Brandon's new stuff that I was doing, he had always worked by himself. He self-produced, self-mixed, self-everything. That's kind of a big part of his brand. He had a rockier song that he wasn't really sure what to do with, and reached out to me and asked if I could, you know, take a look at it for him. Mixed it. Kind of that classic, like, I've never heard one of my songs sound this amazing. Like, I didn't know my voice could sound this good. You know, was able to just essentially from then on, I've done everything he's done aside from one song. And I think it's been 8. No, well, because he's putting out 2 albums on Friday here. So it's 10 albums I've done with him.
Wow.
Yeah. And working with Tom is interesting. He's just prolific. He's put out 3 albums every year for the last 3 years, I think.
Yeah. The guy's on the mic a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's interesting to work on. And he knows what he wants, but we've built a really good relationship. So he really trusts me to just kind of take things. And there's some songs where he's like, I hate the song. I've been trying at it for a while and I just can't, you know, see what you can do with it. And I'm able to, you know, give it some new life and get him all excited. And that, you know, there's 2 songs I can think of that he didn't like anymore. Either he had been working on them for too long and just kind of got lost in the weeds, or, you know, he rewrites a lot of his lyrics. So, like, you know, I've re-recorded this song like 7 times. Like, I don't even know what to do with it anymore. And then it ended up going on to be one of the singles, because after, you know, our collaboration, he was just like in love with it. So, but I've never met him. He lives down in LA, and
you guys have never met?
Never met him. We've talked on the phone, like I would say a dozen times, maybe, just usually about the direction of a song or something. But yeah, it's a good relationship. and he's a good dude. He's always treating me well, and he's not what you'd expect on the phone. He's pretty mellow. He's a little not introverted, but he's just he's really respectful and chill and yeah, it's been good. He's a good artist.
That's incredible that you guys have done so much work together, that he's put so much trust in you with his art, and you guys have actually never hung out and been in the same room. I thought you were joking.
No,
when you said that.
I was supposed to go down. I was taking my wife down to Portland to kind of explore Oregon, and he was supposed to be starting a tour with Brandon and Falling in Reverse, I think is kind of a heavier rock / rap kind of band from the States. And that was in April of 2020. So we had that all scheduled, and I was like, I'm going to be in Portland with my wife, and that's the first. So we're like, I don't know if she'll want to come, but like, right. I'll definitely come and meet you and shake your hand and say hi. And, that was going to be, but then it all got canceled and we couldn't cross the border. And so, someday I'm sure we'll meet, but until then,
That's so cool. Mm-hmm. And if it's not broke, like, don't fix it, right? Like, you guys clearly got a really good thing going. And
well, I it's kind of like the Arn thing, where I think I was able to just kind of slot myself into an area that he needed help, and he didn't realize he needed help.
Yeah.
Because of how much he writes and how much stuff he puts out, he's always writing, he's always recording. He shoots the videos himself with his girlfriend. So, when a song's ready to go, he's doing costuming, he's building sets, so having to mix everything as well is just like, and that was always his least favorite part of it. Really? He loves writing. Yeah. He can write a song he can write multiple songs in a day.
Yeah.
And so being able to just not only pass that off onto someone else, but also have someone that can elevate it and I think it just helps him a lot, because he can finish a song, record it, send it to me, and then he just doesn't have to worry about it until the mix is done, and he can move on to the next thing, and there's been times where he's written something, recorded it that night, sent it to me, I've mixed it the next day while he's shooting the video, and then it comes out the following day. So it's gone from non-existent to on YouTube starting to generate views in 48 hours.
That's insane.
And so it's just, I think it's been a good dynamic, and it's good.
You're also mastering all of those mixes yourself?
I am, yes. And that's not something I always do. There's a couple of mastering engineers that I do like working with a lot. I love Elisa. She was at Nimbus. Was she there when you were there? She was an instructor there for a little while.
Probably afterwards.
She's with Brock at CPS Mastering here in Vancouver.
Nice.
The two of them I've used Brock on quite a few projects, and I love Elisa's ear. I think she's just an amazingly talented engineer. And then there's another guy from Toronto called Christian Montano Mastering.
Okay.
And I really like what he does. So I do enjoy collaborating with mastering engineers. But with Tom's stuff, it's mainly just the turnaround time.
Sure.
That is, because like this latest double record that is coming out, we did 36 songs, and it was in 2 months. 3 of the songs I mixed on my honeymoon while I was in Greece on headphones. Don't tell Tom that. He has no idea. He loved how the mixes turned out, but I tried to get it all done before I left, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So, and just bringing a mastering engineer into that as well, and me sending him mixes, getting any revisions that he has or getting them approved by him, then sending it to mastering, getting that approved.
Yeah. It's a lot of back and forth.
It's a lot of back and forth, and it just I think in that particular case it works this way. And there has been times where Tom has, because of how prolific he is, there have been times where he's had a song in line for the next single. He's shot the video. He's, everything's kind of set up. Something happens and he wants to be topical. So he writes a very topical song for the moment, records it, sends it to me, shoots a video, releases it, within 48 hours. And just having another mastering engineer in there just, kind of...
Yeah, it kind of messes with your guys' formula that you
have.
Yeah. So a couple of questions about mastering. I mean, first of all, if you know you're going to be handing it off,
Yes.
how does your approach change as far as like having a limiter on the mix bus, mixing into the limiter? How does your approach change knowing, okay, I need to leave this, I need to hand this off to someone else afterwards?
Right. That's a good question. I'm still figuring that out because mixing and mastering is kind of blended for me. So when I know I'm mastering my own thing, I don't actually do a lot of mix bus processing at all. Like I'll do a little bit of standard kind of, SSL style bus compression on there. Maybe a little bit of saturation with like some kind of, 2-inch or 1/2-inch tape thing.
Yep.
But that's pretty much it. And then when I finish the mix, I bounce the mix as the mix and then bring it into a different mastering session and I master it as if I was a mastering engineer.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I never do things in the same, I don't know, it's almost like, it's like a perspective shift for me where I'm able to like hear the mix for just the mix and I'm not, there are times where I hear something as I'm mastering or like I should go back and I should tuck that vocal back just to, 1 dB or whatever. But I am able to like switch hats and just be like, okay, now I'm mastering this stereo file that this random mixer Evan sent me, and hopefully it sounds good. And but when I know I'm sending it off, I will do more on the stereo mix. Just sometimes a little bit more saturation. I usually don't do limiting, but a little more saturation. Sometimes some stereo stuff. Just because that's stuff I like doing in my masters. And so I just want to make sure that that's kind of in there.
You want it to sound as close to finished.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the opposite of what I would have thought, right? Like if you're going to give it to someone and they're going to work on it, maybe leave them space. But if in your case, it's like, no, I want to get this completely to like Evan's finish line.
Yeah.
And like do a pre-master on it. And
but without the
limiting.
Like the maximization. And so but like my dynamic range on my mixes is usually, it's pretty small. So when I master my own stuff, like I'm only doing a few dB of limiting.
Right.
Because, the LUFS is already pretty where it
dense.
needs to be. And that just comes from compression and balancing of the individual elements, a little bit on the stereo bus, but even then, like I'm not doing, it's just pretty box standard, either 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 compression. Just a couple, just a couple little movement. It's usually like less than 2 dB.
Totally. I've definitely been getting better at that over the years. I used to lean on mastering, when I was still starting out as like this sounds amateur, this sounds not loud or whatever, like, but once I get it mastered, and now I'm at the point where it's like, like my mix is at -8 LUFS and I'm, the limiter is just for like the brick wall almost. I might push it a bit, but those are all like skills that you develop over the years of, like you said, like compression in stages. I used to not ever use saturation, and then I've discovered saturation and my whole world changed and now I use it everywhere. And so like getting things more colorful, denser, and in stages, and then working towards a final product that doesn't need to be pushed too much, that is dense and full. It was is an art, right?
And it takes a lot of time to kind of master that. But it does affect the music. And there was kind of this whole, I think it's kind of died down a little bit now, but there was this whole movement of like top down mixing for the last couple of years. And like, it can be helpful and it can definitely allow you to move quicker because you can do a lot more templating in the top down side. It's very hard to template individual elements, but it's a lot easier to template, drum bus, music bus, vocal bus, all those things. So I get why people do it, but I think it almost works against all the stuff we were talking about, where you kind of like, rather than working on the individual element and trying to manage the microdynamics and get it to the density that you want, and then allow that density to sink into all the other elements with their densities. And, kind of, you slowly kind of build up this this kind of spread of sonics and density. It's really hard to achieve that with a bunch of random signals going into a bus and then just putting like 17 plugins on there and hoping for the best, you know?
Yeah. I feel like as I get better, there's less shit on my mix bus.
Yeah.
Because it's actually like the steps before it improving rather than leaning on it at the end type of thing.
Well, and the workflow of it is like, in my opinion, it's a lot better as well, because it allows you to do revisions easier. Because if you have everything going to this crazy mix box with all these parallels, and they're kind of like, can we get the like kick drum like a little like flubbier? It's like, oh, okay, well, no, hold on now. I've got this whole system here, and if I move that kick drum, it changes everything, you know?
And upset the balance quite a bit.
So.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Do you have like a favorite part about making records? Is there a moment during the whole process? Is it is it mixing? Is it hearing the final mix? Is it start opening the new session and coloring all the drums? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, is there a moment in all of this?
Hard question to answer, but it probably lives somewhere right in the middle of the mix. There's like, hearing a new song is exciting. Sometimes because I like the artist, sometimes because I can, just kind of like start to hear where it's going to go. Hearing the end product is nice. I actually don't like listen to a lot of my own like mixes, like after I'm done with them. Like I don't like, so it's kind of like they've just kind of gone on and done their thing. And so, but there is a moment like right in the middle of the mix where things start to like flip, like I've done all that post-production massaging to kind of make things fit. I'm starting to balance and my tonal balance is kind of getting there. My volume balance is starting to get there. My dynamic balance is starting to get there. And then there's this moment where it's just kind of like, and it's completely it's like instinctive, where it's kind of like, now I'm playing all of a sudden, where it's kind of like I've stopped worrying about technical stuff and now I'm kind of just like starting to kind of play a little bit, and my whole atmosphere changes. Like my relationship with the song starts to change. It's when I start to feel it, like you were talking about. Like you start to allow yourself to find the feeling, and then you start to kind of go down that path.
And you're doing the performance at that point.
Yeah.
I remember this like totally blew me away. I was watching a video with Chris Lord-Alge, and he did his whole. It was like a mix breakdown that he'd done, and first 45 minutes is like, all of his crazy SSL EQ and drum.
8K, 15.
Yeah,
8K,
like 15
plus
dB
15.
on that snare and all the compression and all the stuff that he's known for and the hardware he was using and all the stuff that like us as engineers like we're like, oh, that's the stuff I want to see, right?
Yeah.
And then like halfway through the video, he sort of like sits back in his chair and he's like, all right, now it's time to start the mix. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what do you mean? Like
what have you been doing?
Been doing this whole time? And I think that's what you're talking about. Like that moment where like, okay, if I had an assistant, they probably would do all this for me. Like just the leveling and getting the sounds right and some gain staging, things like that, getting things under control.
Yeah.
And now like, okay, let the maestro,
start painting,
do his thing. And I was like, whoa. And then he was like, yeah, I'll do my first pass of automation and then I'll listen and then I'll do another pass of automation. And I was like, whoa, like I'm not doing any of that. This is changing the whole way I'm thinking about all of this. So that was like revolutionary for me.
Yeah. Well, like I love Chris Lord-Alge. Like his demeanor, especially like in videos is, a little tough to swallow sometimes, but man, he is just a master at his craft. Good. And his records sound great. Mm-hmm. And like growing up, some of the records that I listened to that I, like sonically like fell in love with, like I made me start to ask like what is going on with the production in this, were mixed by him,
right.
Like the couple Jimmy Eat World's records he did that I was just like, this sounds insane. Like these drums sound amazing, and just that 8K into compression is like, he definitely gets it done. But just that moment of getting into it and being able to play is it's crazy.
Yeah, cool, man.
And there's no feeling like it, man. It's hard to explain because, like, you know, I've been working on getting more efficient with my mixing. That's kind of been it's going to be my goal for next year is just trying to not trim down the time that I'm doing, but just get more efficient with things. And because I can work for 12, 16 hours easy, no problem. And, you know, I can't explain it to my wife, that situation, you know, that feeling of getting that, you know, and she, you know, every day she calls me and she's like, hey, I'm wrapping up work. Like, are you done yet? I was like, I could be. Yeah. I could be. I could stay here for another 6 hours. I'm fine.
That's me every time I'm here.
If you want to keep working, if you want to go out for dinner with some friends, I'm good. She's like, don't you want to go home? I was like, no. You know, I don't not want to go home, but like,
but I'm also like in the zone and like I could continue doing this. That's beautiful, man. I definitely relate. Being a married man myself and getting those phone calls, so just like you just illustrated like my days here. Like, I'm off work. When are you coming home? I don't know when the song's done. Like, I don't know. Like, the song will tell me, but I'm here and I'm, you know, in my world for sure. Playing.
Yeah.
Playing. What are you most proud of, Evan?
That's another hard question. I do feel pride in being able to help an artist achieve a sound that, you know, at least was what they were hoping for. But if it can go above and beyond, and I can get some kind of text with 17 exclamation points, you know, and fire emojis that says like, I never knew it could sound like this. Like that just makes me really proud. I love the collaboration, and it's not like helping artists with their music. It's just, I don't know, just being able to take it to a level that they weren't expecting. That definitely.
It's a real privilege. Sometimes I feel all the time. I mean, I feel so lucky to be able to like make a living making music and helping people sort of achieve their dreams, if you will. If that, you know, but yeah, it's there's nothing like it. Like getting those texts, you know. So I have a handful of them like screenshotted.
Yeah, I wish I saved some. Like I almost want to, like, you know, rather than have like billboard plaques or something, I just want to have like those moments in the studio, just being like, you know, like, how did you do this?
Yeah, that's kind of what I live for, is just serving the artist, serving the record, and being, you know, not staying in my lane, but like doing my thing and being recognized for it. It's such a good feeling as a mixer. Is there like one particular project, one record that really stands out for you over the years that had a lot of success or that like surpassed your expectations?
Well, there's some, but like it sounds super lame, but it's almost like the song I'm most excited about that I've worked on is whatever the latest song I'm working on is.
Cool.
And I think that's one of my superpowers as a mixer is I'm able to hear a song, start to get excited about where it can go, start to push it in that direction, and just having that excitement for the project. But there have been some in the past, but a lot of the ones I'm most proud of aren't all that successful. Which is kind of what led me to mixing more is you know, there's a project I did with that Inkira band, which is the last thing they've released. I hope that they continue to make music, but it just didn't, you know, with management and release schedules, the way that there was some potential that someone was going to purchase the record and release it. And then that kind of put a hold on some other things. And then they didn't do that. And it kind of like, the record didn't come out the way that everybody wanted it to come out. And it was, you know, that was like 8 or 9 months of our life. Just, you know, like me and the band, like living together, like just kind of really
a lot of dedication and hours into
and
that.
we were all so proud of how that record came out. So there's a couple things like that, and I was really proud of some of the like super early stuff that I did, where I would spend months just trying to figure out how to make it sound that way, and then I get it there, and I listen to it now, and it doesn't sound amazing, but it holds up, and it's kind of like being proud of being able to achieve that, but yeah, no, every song I work on, I just absolutely am proud to be on it, and I in the moment, it's literally the most exciting song for me, and
that's so cool. Yeah. That's so cool. I know the answer to this question, but I'm still going to ask it anyways, like, because I want to hear you like articulate this, I guess. Is
sure.
Like, how much are you still learning, and do you feel like you're getting better on every mix?
Definitely. Definitely. So always learning. And like we were talking about with the schools, like not all learning is here's something that I didn't even know, and now I know it because I learned it. There's like change in perspectives. There's the negative learning of like learning something that you don't want to do on your mixes.
Right.
And a lot of the producers I work with and self-produced artists I work with, like they teach me stuff all the time, in their different way of approaching things, just the way that they record instruments or the way that I'm just like, wow, like you said, it's like, that seems wrong, but it sounds awesome. So it must not be wrong. So, so yeah, I'm inspired. That's one of my favorite things about mixing is going from being an artist myself and only working on my music year after year after year after year to being a producer and working on, maybe 5 or 6 kind of big projects a year. So now I'm working with this band for, Q1, and then I'm moving to this record, to mixing where I'm working on hundreds of, records in a year. Different artists, different styles. Like there's just this wealth of knowledge just coming my way. And some of them are super experienced producers. Some of them are bedroom artists that are just trying to record themselves and, finding these cool sounds. Like one thing that's a trap for me, and I'm sure it is for you, is all these new plugins. Yeah. Like people will send me sessions to mix and it's got like 7 plugins that I don't own. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I got to buy these plugins to see what they were working on. And all these cool, like Baby Audio and all these cool companies with these, new things and new sounds and new ways to just make stuff weird and,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Drip comes to mind. There are a lot of these plugins that are not so much mixing tools, but also like creative tools at the same time.
For sure. Yeah. Which I like because, when I first started, like Arn and then a lot of guys at the School of Sound Recording in Manchester were still using analog, right? They were using Pro Tools, but they were using it like a tape machine and then mixing on the board, or doing like a mix in Pro Tools, but summing it on the board. And all the plugins we were using at the time were emulations of 1176s or Neve EQs or whatever. And then you start to get into, because we're in the box, we don't need to, our EQ can be like this, or it can have dynamic bands, or it can be completely creative, or, like this compression can just not even be what you would think of as a compressor. Like, and you start to go into these creative realms where it just gets really fun.
It's really fun and endless combinations really of things.
Yeah.
And so easy to undo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Which can be a rabbit hole, a lot of what artists, like if I'm being honest, a lot of what artists hire me for is being able to conclusively give them the final version of their product, because they've either been working on it for months and months and they've tried every variation you can possibly think of. And a lot of times it's up to me to say, this is the version, and it's hard to do that when you have endless, because you can kind of fall into the same trap that they fall into, where it's kind of like, I want a vocal effect here. I want this vocal to sound weird and different. So is it like an octave down? Is it like a bit crushed thing? Is it some kind of weird warbly thing? is it like a throwback thing with like some crazy slap delay and a Leslie sound, or like what are we doing here? And you can like, I could spend literally the 12 hours I set aside to mix your song just working on that one little vocal. Yeah.
Easy. Yeah. So are you mixing fully in the box then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had some outboard stuff I was using and I was printing through. So like I had like a lead vocal that I'd send to like, it was like a Summit Audio and like a compression. But I've kind of, I blame Tom for it, but I kind of nixed all that just because of recalls. And I love the workflow of being able to jump from project to project to project.
Yeah.
Like and helping find that feeling that we were talking about. You know, like if I'm working on a song and I'm doing all the pre-prep and I'm just not really vibing on it yet, then it would be a disservice to me and my time and to the artist that I'm working on to kind of like try and force myself to like dive down it. So like, why not just jump to another song and work on that for a little while, even if it's just like an hour of working on that, and then I'll come back to this one.
Yeah. Oh, big time. So much flexibility, being able to work on your honeymoon.
Yeah.
Maybe take sessions home. Do you do you work off a laptop and bring things home sometimes?
So everything I do is on a laptop, which is, it's hard for people to believe sometimes, but like I do have a desktop computer, but I haven't turned it on this entire year. Not once. It's like a clone of my laptop system. But I essentially just have like a dock system where I bring in my laptop, plug in one cable. I've got a big screen with, you know, my interfaces and keyboard and mouse and everything, it all hooked up, and then I can take that system and I can bring it home with me.
Sweet.
And a big part of that, again, I blame Tom for this, was not when there is that 10 p.m. call of like, hey, can we make this one little quick change for the song that's releasing tomorrow that you gave me like 3 days ago? You know, I don't want to have to go to this, like drive all the way down to the studio, set everything up, do my recall, print it, you know, like it's the way I've explained it to people is like, he's hired me to mix a song and it's up to me to build the workflow of how that whole process is going to work, you know? And so if I choose to have all this outboard stuff and this summing mixer and, you know, these converters that I have to print through, because I think that's what I need to make myself sound good, like that's my fault. It's not his fault, you know? So when he calls me at 10 o'clock at night saying, can I get this revision?
You shouldn't be like, oh, what do you mean?
Yeah. Like it's not his fault that I have to drive to the studio to print this thing. That was my design.
Yeah.
And I just decided to not have that be part of my design anymore. And it's worked out great.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happier with it. Like, I think things sound better than ever. And the fact that I'm actually taking my laptop, because before I had a studio computer and then I had a clone, like it was carbon copying cloning to my laptop. Mm-hmm. But every now and again, there'd be like, it didn't, you know, there's one plugin that didn't get updated, or, you know, there's one thing that's different. And if I try and pull up a session and there's like one thing that's different, then it's not, you know, because most of my revisions are like very like, can I get this, but with the bass, like just like a little more like fuzzy. It's like, okay, everything is perfect. Leave everything exactly as it is. Just the, you know, and if I try and do a recall with outboard gear and, you know, like, it's just, it has to be exact. So
the benefits of the flexibility and just the ease of use and all of those things you just mentioned, I think greatly outweigh the digital versus analog argument that we could have, or that people are having all day online. I mean, I think it's just,
and there is like, the thing I like about analog stuff is it helps me make that commitment. Like we were talking about, like I'm the one that's deciding the absolute final presentation. And it helps me get there, because when I send it out, you know, to like your Neve channel strip, and it's got a little saturation built in, it's got that transformer boost in the low end, it's got a little bit of glue, even if the compressor's not working, you know, like there's all these things that it just kind of does by default that I have to do in the box. So I've been using the Slate VMR a decent amount. And like my chain on that for like different, like it starts to look like, you know, like a little virtual channel for a little this, a little squeeze for this, a little bit of EQ into this compressor, you know, like I'm building all of that stuff that I'm kind of missing from analog, and it takes a little more work, but that's the thing I like about the analog realm is it kind of has that commitment baked in,
yes.
which is fun.
Yeah.
But like, I don't think it's, I do a lot of, that stuff the few times I do record, like have an artist come in or something, like I'll bake a lot of stuff in, so that it's already kind of in there. But on the mixing side, I think, like you said, the workflow of being able to make instant changes and it's important now. And like,
oh yeah,
the amount of like random recalls and the amount of like, hey, this thing just got picked up for sync of a song we did 6 months ago. We need it, but we need to like mute this one word, or like we need to like, they want it without the strings because the strings make it too cinematic. So can we like just get a version? And I'm like, from a song, like long time ago, and just being able to pull it up. Yeah, I can like, as a business, like I can take care of that for you. And it's only going to take me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Is a lot. Cause I remember when I was working with Arn and we were doing everything on the desk, like when he had a mix up, that was the only thing we could work on for like weeks.
Exactly.
And like if someone called him and said, hey, can I, it's like, sorry that this is all, this, like I can't do that for like 2 weeks,
You're stuck. Your hands are tied.
Yeah.
All of those little knobs are there for a reason. You can't undo that balance. And that's a weird thing that does not exist with digital. Just pull up a session, boom, opens up exactly the way you left it.
Yeah. And some of my peers that still do hybrid have found systems of, like the crystal art algae thing where they leave them at specific settings all the time and they're feeding, with the gain staging, they're kind of, so their compressor, their outboard never really moves between mix to mix, and their summing mixer is set up a certain way so that, they can pull up a session and it's essentially going to the hardware as it was. But the thing, like, especially with like when I'm working with mastering engineers, is like if they request a revision and it has to go through all that stuff, regardless of what workflow you've set up, like it's going to be a little different.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like even just on different days, like when you turn on all that gear and it's going through all that gear and
100%, especially things that are maybe tube based that have a certain, like a sweet spot for when they warm up, or the weather that day.
And maybe it's fine that they're different, but like for me and like my workflow, like I just need it to be the same, like I need it to null out, because when I'm working with particular people that know, like there are some producers I work with that could mix as good as I mix, but they like to work with me. But when they send me notes, like it's like very specific, and they're like, the drums are perfect. We are not going to do anything to change the drums. So if any of my notes that I'm telling you are going to affect the drum tone, like because of like, let me know.
Okay. Yeah.
And so it's like, there's just that kind of back and forth of being able to accommodate what the client wants, it's just, it has to be in the box.
It's time is money too, man.
Yeah.
It's
And I think it's only going to get more and more like there are some styles of music and some producers that I look up to that still work in a very analog way and it suits their style and their thing. But I think more and more the way that music and content are kind of like blurring, like it's going to be a part of our job to be able to facilitate these kind of things. And if you're the kind of mix engineer that says to a client, I can't do that revision for you. Sorry. Like it's just, that's not going to fly anymore.
Customer service.
Yeah.
They're going to find somebody else pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I have my gear here and I originally bought it because I thought it was going to make me sound better. Years and years ago. And I'm not the type of person to buy and sell and lose money. Like everything I've ever bought, I still have, and I'm just hanging on to it, because it's part of my journey. And the few times that I'm still using my hardware distressor versus the plug-in, like would be, committing on the way in at a recording stage, or if I have a little extra time, printing it through that as a stem, and now it's gone, and it is, it's got the character of that, but it's in Pro Tools. So if I leave, I don't have to worry about recalling.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority, more and more nowadays, like a lot of the stuff's not getting turned on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm in the box like almost all the time right now. Obviously the, you know, like the Manly Core pre, phenomenal. No plugin sounds like that.
No.
On the way in.
Yes.
To give me that 3-dimensional vocal or the Neve or things like that. But when it comes time to like, okay, now we're working, the timer is on, clients expecting things, it's like, yeah, in the box, because I've seen the benefits for myself.
Yeah.
100%. What advice would you give to yourself from, I don't know, like 15 years ago when you started out with all that you know now and all of your experience? Like, what would you tell a younger Evan?
Well, that's a tough question too, because like I don't have a lot of regrets. And every decision that has led to kind of the next step into where I'm at now. And I love where I'm at now. So, you know, I don't know, but I think it's easy for, especially people like you and me who are very, wanting to make the client happy and get that, help them get, you know, the things we were talking about. It took me a long time to kind of understand my value and what I was actually contributing. And so I think understanding the business side of things, is important. And if you're an up and coming person and you're wanting to make this your career and your life, like it's important that you educate yourself on that, because like, I feel like it's really not talked about in, you know, forums and stuff all the time. Like it's all about like, you know, what EQ do you use and like what settings do you have on your compressor? And it's not like, you know, like how much are you guys actually like charging? And like, are you getting points? Or are you not getting points? Like, you know, like, and there's this whole other side of it that it is never, I didn't look at for a really long time.
Yes.
And,
yeah, I hear you.
I've landed in a good spot. So it's not like it was a huge mistake, but I think something I should have looked at a lot earlier.
Yeah. Right from the jump.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that for sure. Like, because the business side, money things, math doesn't come easy for me or for, you know, artists in general, but we're just inclined to like get into making the art, making the song, starting the mix without like really covering our ass.
Yeah.
Like my wife's always like, are you charging for this phone call? Are you like, why are you mixing at home right now? Like, you know, all these types of things, like these little things that add up, like where I'm trying to get into more of a business mind, into a smart mindset. And like, now I'm getting better at it for sure. But my God, there were years and years where like just put infinity hours into something and still charged like a dumb little rate. And it was like, why didn't I charge for like, oh, we came in and re-recorded parts and like, but it's still the same mix rate. Like, what was I doing? You know what I mean?
And it's tough because you're wanting to help the clients. And I, you know, I'm sure you're the same as me, but like literally every single one of my clients, I consider a friend, and we talk like friends. And, you know, so there is that blurred line of client and colleague and friend.
Yeah.
But understanding what it is you're bringing to the project, understanding the value that you're adding to the success of that piece of content, and as that goes out into the world, you know, like what did your contribution kind of add to that?
Yeah.
And you know, it's important to be realistic about it, because sometimes I feel like a lot of people want points that they're just doing a very simple service, and you know that service is valuable and worth getting paid for. But there's been a lot of projects I've worked on where, you know, this guy that recorded 3 lines of the vocal in some random studio, he wants like 2 points on the it's like, what? No.
Oh wow.
It's like, we paid you for like 2 hours worth of recording time. Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So, you know, there is like, and then there is something to be said, and this is what I think makes it really challenging, is there is something to be said about when you're coming up, providing more benefit to the artist than what you're charging, you know? So giving them a discounted rate and going above and beyond, and like, that's how most people that I know that are successful built their career.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't want to be the guy that doesn't have any experience, doesn't have any credits, and is trying to charge a super premium rate because you're not going to build the client base that you want. You're not going to, but you also don't want to do the first 27 projects that you do for free just because you're trying to build your portfolio,
and totally burn yourself out and
just not being able to afford your own future, like you're trying to build something, but if you can't even pay your expenses, like you're not going to be able to do it. So like you're just
so know your worth, respect your time,
and educate yourself on it, and then reevaluate it every now and again, because every project is different, and your contribution to every project is different, and the way that different projects work, like some are on spec, so let's talk back end. Some are big upfront fee, but you don't want to share any percentages, so I'm fine with that. Like every project is different with your contribution to it, and so evaluating it project to project, and then kind of reevaluating things, because like there was a time I had the same rate for like, it was like 4 years or something, and same, my wife, same as yours. She's like, do you not raise your rates like every year? Like all businesses do that. I was like, really? Yeah. Really? Like all businesses charge like, for like phone call and like those things. And I haven't done any of that yet, but you kind of like, you need to think about it like a business at some point. You
do. You really have to. We're making art, but we're also like, there's an income portion of it, and we've got to be like responsible to ourselves in that regard.
Well, and one thing that kind of opened my eyes to it a little bit was when me and Tom were talking rates, and he said, like, I need you to continue working on my projects, so like let's find a rate that allows you to still be working on my projects 2 years from now. Because like if you, and I thought about it, and if I get to the point where I'm broke and I can't keep it afloat and I have to go get another job, or like all of a sudden I can't do what I do for the artists that I do it for, so like that doesn't benefit them at all. So you kind of like owe it to yourself, but also to the artists that you're working with in the whole future, to like make sure that you're keeping an eye on that value and that remuneration and all that stuff.
100%. Yep. No, that's super, super good advice, man. Why don't we wrap it up?
Yeah.
Any last words? Oh yeah, I wanted to know one thing. Like,
sure.
What is one thing you want about yourself that you want your artists, your fans, people to know about Evan that has nothing to do with music?
Nothing to do with music.
Yeah, tell us something fun about yourself.
Well, it's kind of sad, but I don't have a lot of other than music. It's like, it's my hobby, it's my passion, it's my work, it's my, but you put me on the spot here.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that I can't think of anything. I don't know.
Okay, how about favorite album of all time?
Favorite album of all time? That's hard too. Probably Purple Rain, Prince.
Oh wow, nice.
Yeah, I'm a huge Prince fan.
I went through a crazy Prince phase after high school, and actually was so much so that I dressed up as one of my Halloween costumes was Prince one year, and that's how deep of a Prince phase I went through. It was fun. So.
Yeah, no, I my dad listened to Prince, and he used to put it on when I was a kid and dance around, and his music's always, I don't know, he's it's just really stuck with me. He's a and that's one of that self-produced, not all his records sound amazing. Sometimes sonically, like they're a little weird and they're a little like bass shy and stuff, but it gets the music across, and the presentation and the aesthetic holds up. So it kind of, that's another one that even with the different flavors of production, where it's kind of like it's not what you would expect that song to sound like, but it works in terms of the presentation and the sonics and stuff. So
done tastefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
To serve that record, Dude, well, this has been so much fun, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me, do the podcast. I've learned a lot from you today, so thank you for that. Where can people find you online if they want to go and follow you?
Best place to find stuff online is probably my website, just evanmorganproductions.com, evanmorganmixing.com. I think that they both go to the same place. In terms of social media, I'm pretty much only on Instagram these days. I don't really partake in too many social medias. It sucks too much brain power.
For the best, I think.
And then the YouTube channel is
the YouTube channel
is something that I don't have a lot of time to commit to it, and it's definitely not something that I'm like trying to put out a video, be a YouTuber or anything like that. But I do read all the comments, and I do reply to a lot of people on there. So check those out as well. That's just Evan Morgan.
There's some really good, if anyone listening is like an aspiring mixer or producer, there's a lot of really good content on there. So definitely worth checking out Evan's channel. And there's topic specific episodes too, which are really cool.
Yeah, I kind of tried to just take a little snippet out of like how to distort an 808 or how to play with delay throws or something. And it's usually just like something I'm working on in a song. I'm like, hey, this would make a cool video, because that's all the time I really have to dedicate it to it. It's a fun way to spend, like if I'm mixing all day and then I shoot a video and I can take it home and I can edit in the evening and just do something. I'm still sitting in front of my computer. So that's something I need to work on. I read a lot of books, and I do enjoy working out. So that's one thing that kind of gets me away, but 90% of my time, whether it's working or editing video or consuming, it's just sitting in front of my computer. So I don't know what we're going to do about that, but posture and back health and all that's probably going to come into play at some point here.
Well, it's good to hear you're exercising.
I think it's important. That's I think I do want to kind of like bring my best self to the mixes I'm working on. So if I'm exhausted and underslept and eating terribly and have zero exercise, then I don't know how I'm going to be able to tackle a mix.
Definitely. That's why I don't go into a mix if I'm in a bad mood. Like, don't even start. It's different than building a brick wall. Like, it's you can't just like start and finish it. You've got to, it's a performance, like we've said many times. It's like get in the right mood and the right mindset. Now we begin. Now we play. Well,
and we owe it to the artists that we're working on too, because having someone like us collaborate on their project isn't cheap for them. And it might be like, there's some artists I've worked with that are fans of some of the other music that I've done. And so they reach out to me, kind of like hoping that I can add a little bit of that spice to their thing. And like, if I just, if I allocate 12 hours to do that, but it happens to be on a day that, I got in a fight with a family member, or I was hungover from the night before or something, like I'm really doing a disservice to that client. Cause like that might be their kind of like one thing that they were like, I'm putting all my chips into this basket. Like, you owe it to them and to yourself to make sure that you're your best self when you're working on it. So
there we go. Let's leave it at that. That is beautiful. Evan Morgan, Demo to Limo with Max DeShaw. Thank you guys for listening. Evan, thanks again, man. It was really, really cool meeting you.
Thank you so much for having me, man. It was an absolute pleasure to be here.
Appreciate it. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.